So chapter 8, we're going to be modeling the house interior. So this not only delves deeper into more structural type modelings that we were doing with modeling the outside of the house, but we're also going to combine some of the disciplines we used in modeling household objects, and even some of the lessons from modeling the weapon prop will come into play here. So here's our outline. We'll be following this to the T in this video. Be sure to check back after the class's lecture to check back at this outliner for various hyperlinks to the video. This one might be a little long since we're going to be covering a lot of different modeling techniques, and really it's just going to be a complete overview of a whole modeling process of getting this project done. I'm going to record every single step. It's just going to be me recording my workflow as we go. All right, so why don't we go ahead and bring up, I already get rid of some of these output windows. I already have an example of a completed house here. So here's the outside of my house. Pretty simple house. Keep it simple for the videos and whatnot. So why don't we go through and look and see some of the work I've already done here. Okay. So I'm going to look in here, and first, why don't we use some of my layers here to get some of these walls down so we can see what's going on here. As you can already tell, the first thing you probably notice about the scene is just how much stuff there is here. So more than anything, a good outliner and a good layers. I got my outliner over here on the left, and I got some good layers at work over here on the right. Setting these up will be probably one of the most important things within this assignment. You finally get to see why I harp on scene organization, because could you imagine how easy it would be to get lost in your scene and have a bunch of things in the way? I want to select this, I want to select that. Oh, terrible, huh? So making sure we have a good layers and outliner will be huge in this scene. All right. Um, Here's another thing that might be helpful for scene management and whatnot is something I've noticed in 2016 that was on by default. If I was trying to select just the verts on this refrigerator, and I'll just drag a marquee around them, see how we're also selecting other objects as well? Because these aren't locked down, everything's fair game to be selected. So even that back, and it's really annoying. So I'm going to teach us how we can get around that. So what we'll do is we'll go to Windows, Settings and Preferences. We'll go to Preferences, and then we'll go to Selection. You can see Selection down there right there. And then we want to uncheck Ignore Selection Priority. All right, with that unchecked, let me get this magnifier out of the way. I'll probably be using it a few more times. With that out of the way, let me make sure that it save. Make sure you save your settings. With that out of the way, now when I go into vertex mode, I'm only selecting the vertices on the object I want to select on. No more selecting objects in the background there. All right, so that's another quick way where we can have a little bit of an easier time in our scene with so many objects. Let's talk about our scene viewer real quickly. More specifically, Viewport 2.0 rather. Right now, we have a few issues going on in here. We have a lot of aliasing. See all the jaggies on the corners of everything here? Got some jaggies going on. And since we're working primarily in gray colors, it's kind of hard to make out some details here and there. But our Viewport 2.0 will really help us get around that. So I'll click on my Scene View menu up here. I'll go to Renderer, Viewport 2.0, and then I'll click on the Extra Options box. There's two things I want to tweak while we're here. I'll try to collapse everything for us. All right, so this is probably what you'll see in the beginning. We have some performance settings that we can tweak around, but the two things I really want to get to are screen space ambient occlusion and anti-aliasing. So why don't we go ahead and turn on both of these guys right here, multi-sampling, anti-aliasing. And if your computer can handle it, I'm going to set mine up to 16. Now look at the edge of my refrigerator right here. It's very smooth. Look what happens when I uncheck the multi-sampling, anti-aliasing. Oh, the jaggies come back. So if your computer can handle these settings, that'd be good to do. So now I'm going to go to screen space ambient occlusion. I'm going to enable it. And we get some really nice shadowing effects, self-shadowing effects. So any two objects that are near one another, two surfaces that are near one another, we'll start to see some automatic shadow being cast on these really tight places right here. All right, you can even notice it around the drawers and everything. This just helps you see even more of that detail that may be a little bit harder to see when you're using just completely gray tones. All right. So why don't we take this time now to discuss how we can set up our cameras so they're not an issue. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is make sure that my cameras are set in a way where they're not going to give me any kind of issues. So the first thing I'll do is I'll select my perspective camera over here in my outliner. And one thing I always do, and this, I think Maya may do it by default now, but if you ever find that your cameras, well, I just went crazy. If you ever find that your cameras are physically in your scene through a wireframe, I don't know if it does it in 2016 anymore, but it used to. What I like to do for all my cameras is select them all in my outliner, go to visibility, set that to 0 so it turns all my cameras off. I can still see through them. They're still rendering the scene, but I'm not going to select them on accident. And then I'll right click on visibility and it opens up this channel box editor. And if we go to lock selected, now I can't change the value of this visibility no matter how hard I try. And my cameras are always going to be invisible. So with my perspective camera chosen now, I'm going to double click the attributes until we see the attribute editor up here. So there's our attribute editor's little button up here to the top left or top right of the screen here. That zoom didn't work quite like I wanted. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the near clip plane and the far clip plane. So if your near clip plane is too small, we start seeing all these horrible black artifacts going on. But we can get really close to our objects. All right, so we're zooming really deep into this door frame right here. If it's too high, though, if our near clip plane is too high, let's say like 5, I have to zoom out quite a bit to even see that door frame. All right. So what we want to do is we want to find the perfect near clip plane setting for us. And I like just to set it, in this case, in this scene, I like to set it at 0.1. We can still get relatively close to my scene. And then when I zoom out, we're not getting that terrible artifacting anymore. So I like that there. And your far clip plane, if it's too low here, let's set that to 100. We can't render things in the distance much anymore. So I like to have a relatively high setting there. 1,000 seems to work pretty well for all intents and purposes. All right, great. The ambient occlusion is really making this scene look nice too. Very good. There's some weird spots, but for the most part, it's doing pretty good. The last thing I want to talk about is backface culling. Before, when I first opened up my scene, I was having to hide walls and this and that. Well, what is backface culling? I'm going to bring up my inner walls real quickly. All right, so immediately we get this big black border around my walls here. That's because the inside of my inner walls is where my normal faces are facing. This is the positive side of my face. And here's the negative side of my face. For all intents and purposes, this side will not be rendered in any video game engine as a rule of thumb. There are ways where you can render both sides of a flat polygon, but typically we want to, recognize that this black part is the opposite side of a model. And I think if we use If we go to lighting and check two-sided lighting, then we can't really tell at a glance what side is the negative side and which side's our face normal side, our positive side. So I usually like to keep lighting turned off. All right, great. So why discuss normal faces right now in their direction? Well, there's a really cool tool called backface culling. So if we go to shading, in shading in our viewport, if we turn backface culling on, then every face that's on the negative side is invisible now. So look what happens as I'm rotating my scene. It's just showing the faces where the normals are set to positive. So that's immensely helpful here. And another cool thing is we can really just kind of see our scene for what it is. You may notice though that we're having trouble selecting some things. Sometimes it's selecting the walls, even though it's not being rendered. Well, that's where our channels come into play here. If I set my inner walls to R to lock them out, I'm not going to be selecting my wall anymore, and it's not going to be rendered. So this will be a big help with maybe seeing through some walls here and there. It might make the scene a little bit more confusing to navigate if you can't see the backside of your polygons. So just remember, you can always turn backface culling on and off. All right, great. Since I am screencasting right now, I turned off my ambient occlusion because I was noticing it was slowing down my frames that Maya was able to draw my scene. But if I were you and if it can handle it, I would keep ambient occlusion is like a nice way to go in and kind of see some finer detail. So I went ahead and took care of that. All right, the next thing I want to discuss in our chapter here is creating a spreadsheet for all the props we're going to be making here. All right. So what does that mean? I'm make a spreadsheet for all our props. Well, Google Drive is a great way to do this. So if you log into Google Drive using your school's email, you can go and create spreadsheets. So why don't I show you an example of that right now? So what I'll do is I will I'll just switch over to my school's email. Why don't I just open up a new scene? I'll make sure I'm logged in as my school's email address. Let me widescreen this. And you can either use your little settings right here, or you can just type in Google Drive in the address bar and it'll find it like so. And if you go to this page, you can always go to your Google Drive. That's my personal one. Here's my school one here. So this is, if you've never used Google Drive, you probably won't see anything here. I have a test folder there. If we click on New and go to Google Sheets, then you can see a blank sheet right here. All right. So I'm going to go exit all that. That's how you get into Google Drive Sheets. And I've used a fill color in all of my rows and got it nice and outlined. And I have a few columns here that are specifically named here. First, I have the asset name, so I know what asset I'm going to be describing here. I have all these different things that I want to model in my scene. So this spreadsheet kind of forces you to consider exactly what you're going to tackle on your project before you jump in and get in over your head. So make sure that you create your sheets. In fact, this will be a requirement for the turn-ins here. I want to see a Google Sheets from everybody. And for everything listed in the parameters here, or everything you think you're going to model in your scene, you're going to make an entry for it right here. And I just have a few columns here that might be helpful. You can keep track of what's modeled, what's UV'd, what's textured. Material description is something that's come in handy in the past. Let's see, why do I have a material description and how do I use it? Well, the first thing I describe in my material description is the light quality of the material. So if it's matte, meaning it does not reflect any light, I'll make a note of that. and then I'll kind of give a brief 1 or 3 word description of what we're talking about. So my walls, not much light reflected, if at all, very matte, very non-reflective, and it'll just be a painted surface. But yet my floor may be hardwood panel floor. Hardwood flooring has a light gloss on them. You can kind of see some light reflecting off of those wood floors. And I described it as a wood panel. And then let's go down to maybe my sink. And I describe that as being metal. Metal to me is its own kind of surface quality, meaning it has very focused light reflection, very bright specular highlights, and a just brief description of maybe the color for that. This next column may be a little, well, what does texture sheet name mean? Well, in the world of video games, many of these props are going to be UV'd on the same texture sheet, so they'll share the same JPEG or PNG of the texture. So it's called atlasing your texture, just making a huge collection of a bunch of props and texture them all in one file. So sometimes it might be a little confusing if you have multiple textures out there. So I have a little sheet that I can refer back to, a column I can refer back to that tells me exactly what texture sheet or what texture file I have that particular prop UV'd and textured on. And then here's a big one right here. Reference links. You could save all the images to your own computer, but more than likely you're going to be finding these images. I'm pretty much 100% sure you're going to be finding these images on the internet. So you're going to put your link right here, so you don't have to have all your photos clogging up a drive or keep track of them all. But you can just keep a little list of them here, and you can see I'm just having a bunch of photo reference for pretty much every prop in my scene. And you'll notice I have a few tabs for multiple things. That's because in this picture I can see the couch I want to make, the coffee table I want to make, the rug type. I have various things I can find in one picture, so I'm just relisting those over and over. All right, so that's pretty important. I want to see everybody using photo reference for any piece of furniture they make. If I'm going to be checking that within the grading. If I see that you've just like started modeling a refrigerator without a photo reference, and then you're like, oh dang it, let me find a refrigerator that kind of looks like this, and the photo reference, it's pretty obvious that you haven't modeled from a photo reference, that will be points taken off. So one of the big themes for this project is preparation with an asset list, and then modeling for sure from photo references. Maya has a way of telling you how you're supposed to model if you're not modeling from a photo reference. Meaning, if you're modeling just straight from your imagination, more than likely your model is going to suffer and it's going to be uninspired. So being able to refer to, something like this really makes sure we're keeping in our vision of what our house is going to look like, true to form. Very important. All right, so that's my asset list, and I've gone over the outline. I guess all that's left to do is to start getting modeling. So why don't we get started on the floor of my house? I'm going to just minimize this Maya scene and bring up a fresh Maya scene. Well, not fresh, because set all layers to visible. Set all layers to visible. There we go. You can see that this is the house I modeled in my modeling chapter, or my house chapter. And I've got it really organized. I got layers for everything. Let's bring up my outliner. I got my outliner nicely kept. And I'm ready to start getting into this house, and we're going to make the floor now. So the first thing I'm going to do is maybe get rid of this foundation and the roof and the walls. And since they're on their own layer, all I got to do is just hide them. Well, that's not a very good way to start. So why don't I bring back my walls here? All right, so these are the walls I made for my outside. And you'll notice I have an extrusion for all the window panes in here. So we'll get to that in a second. But why don't we make my floor? We're going to make my floor now based on these walls right here. And I'm just going to create a new plane. I'm going to make sure that it's got one single face. So to make sure it only has one face, we'll select our extra options here. And we'll set our width and height divisions to 1. And why don't I set my actual width and height something a little bit larger. Let's do a 10 by 10 to get started out, just so my plane's not so small. And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to take every single one of these vert corners, and I'm just going to snap them to the corners of my outside wall here. This is giving me a really quick way to get the exact dimensions that I need for my floor here. We have a few considerations to make. Let's bring back my foundation. All right, and I'll make it selectable. My foundation that I made and my floor could clash here. Maybe they're not completely lined up. Maybe they're overlapping. See, so it's kind of hard to tell since everything's gray. But I think before my floor was hidden underneath my foundation. So I'm going to bring it up a little bit. I have another consideration to make. I have this porch right here. So it would stand to reason that my floor came up to the same height as my porch, or roughly thereof. So I'm going to make sure they're roughly the same height. I have another consideration to make with my floor, and that's I think I don't really need my floor to be flush with my outer wall because that might create some weird shading errors or shading problems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to scale it in just a little bit. Just kiss the scale a little bit. Just to have a little bit of separation. I'll hide my foundation. A little bit of separation between my outer walls and my floor. And that'll come in handy in a second. So with my floor pretty much done, I'll freeze its dimensions. I'll reset them. I'll name this floor mesh 1. And with the floor selected, I'll create a new layer. Call this floor. Lay. And lock it down. All right. Great. Now I have my floor made. So why don't we talk about the inner wall next? Okay. This could be a doozy. This could be a little bit hard to do, especially if you have a house with multiple inside rooms and whatnot. But why don't we focus just on the inner wall that follows closely with the outer wall? Let's not worry about any interior walls. In fact, my house isn't going to use any, so that's going to be something you can just figure out on your own. I wouldn't be opposed to you making those their own separate meshes if you need some room dividers or some room walls. So those are going to be on their own separate mesh. What I want to focus on is just getting an inner wall for my house that you see here. So I'm going to unlock my walls layer here. Okay. And I need to do a little bit of prep here. I found out that I didn't really need to inset these window frames at all, or these window holes, because my windows already have a frame on them. So the frame is basically going to take care of that space on the inside between my outer and inner walls. You'll see that in a second whenever I make my inner wall. So with my window frames made, I can pretty confidently get rid of these inset extrusions. What's the quickest way to do that? Well, I'm going to go to my top view here, and I'm going to just select a very fine selection. And you'll notice I drug a marquee box from the top corner all the way to the bottom right corner. Didn't select the outer walls, just the extrusions, and boom, all my extrusions are gone. Because what we're going to do now is we're going to actually select my complete outer wall as a whole object, and we're going to extrude. Go to Edit Mesh, or is it Mesh Tools? Edit Mesh over here, and we're just going to extrude my outer walls And why don't we just use our thickness setting here? Well, it looks like we've extruded on the outside of my outer walls. So why don't we do a -2? And you'll notice I have a problem already in that I've completely reversed the normals of my house. That's something we can take care of in a second. But that much division between my outer and inner walls is probably all I really want to work with here. I just need to have some space in between them. And before I deselect my selection here, notice how I just have my outer wall selected here. In fact, I want to set this to -4. I want to give myself a little bit more space than that. All right, great. What I'm going to do next with my faces selected, I'm going to go to Mesh, and I'm going to Edit Mesh rather, go down to the faces, and I'm going to extract those faces. So not only have I extruded out a wall for my inside wall, but I've extracted them so I can have separate meshes for my outer and inner wall, so they can be on their own separate layers. Now I'll select both of them. Why don't we go ahead and reverse those normals? There we go. So there's my outer wall, and there's my inner wall. So let me bring up my outliner so we can get organized here. You'll see that my walls mesh group now has two different objects in them. So I'll delete my history. I'll call this walls inner mesh 1. I'll copy and paste that name because it'll make making this name easier to do. And I'll call this outer. I'm going to drag the inner down there, middle mouse click and drag. So now I have my own inner walls as a separate mesh now. And I'm going to set this to walls inner lay and lock them down, maybe even hide them. Now I can pretty much confidently get rid of my walls in general here. Well, now I see that my outer walls aren't on their own layer anymore. When I combined and extracted, or when I extracted and did all that stuff, it kind of knocked them out of their own layer. Remember that I had to name them again. So, you might be asking yourself, what about this stuff here too? What's an easy way to get rid of that? Well, I'm going to double click the edge of this leftover extrusion. And I'm going to go around and I'm going to double click the edge loops for all the border edges of these extrusions here. Got the wrong one there. I'll deselect that. Double click all these border windows, border extrusion edge loops. Because they're a little thin to maybe try to draw a marquee box around. That could have been tedious. Like this isn't, though. All right. So now with all the border edges of my walls that I want, of those unwanted extruded faces, I'm going to hold down Control, right click, go down two faces to faces, and guess what we have selected now? Those extruded faces. It selected any edge or any face that was connected to those edges we just had. We basically converted our selection from edges to faces. Now I press delete on there, and now I get my nice flat inner wall back. Perfect. So I'm going to select these again, tie this back to add selected objects to my walls layer. And in fact, I'm going to call this walls outer now. Those are my outer walls. There we go. So now I have my inner walls and my floor made, and everything's rolling pretty good. All right. So next, why don't we make my ceiling here? All right. Ceilings are really easy to make. All I'm going to do is take my floor layer, duplicate my floor, bring it up like so. And I do have a consideration here, two considerations. First, I need to reverse the normals because my ceiling will be facing downwards. So I'll go to Mesh Display, Reverse. So now my ceiling is basically facing in the right direction now. And I'm going to bring up my roof layer. because I need to put my ceiling just right underneath my roof there. I don't want them to overlap or get clipped. So that'll be a way where I can see that. All right, great. And what we have left with is floor mesh 02. So why don't we call this duplicated floor ceiling mesh of 01. And you guessed it, we're going to put this on its own layer. So a quick way to do that is there's a create empty new layer, or create a layer with and put everything you have currently selected into that layer. And since we had my ceiling selected, I already have that going on. So now my ceiling layer is made. All right, great. So a few more things to consider here. Next is my chimney here. And this chimney doesn't look too good right now. And in fact, it's hard to see everything here. So I have two options. I can either go to shading, turn back face culling on, hide my roof. Now I can focus on, well, wait a minute. There's it looks like my chimney was in my roof layer. So I need to select my chimney and remove it from my roof layer by going remove selected objects from this layer. All right, so I had my chimney selected. I guess I need to make a layer for my chimney. I don't need it tied to my roof anymore. So there's my chimney layer. And why don't I bring up my asset list? I'll go to chimney. And there we go. I picked a really basic chimney, nothing too crazy. And in fact, I'm probably going to omit that wooden mantle place. I just want to make sure that my chimney is up to snuff. Right now, we don't have anywhere to put our wood. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to insert edge loop here, right at the bottom of these windows. And in fact, I want to insert another edge loop here because I want to take these verts around this edge loop, just the bottom edge loop here. I'm having trouble selecting those. And maybe the bottom ones here. And I'm going to scale them out now. In fact, I'll deselect the verts at the bottom and just bring it down a little bit, right? Like so. All right. And you know what? I'm going to give my chimney a little bit more width. And I want to make another edge loop right near my floor here. All right, now I can extrude this face. Kind of get that bottom piece a little bit closer to the floor there. And extrude this in. And I guess if you wanted to, you could extrude this inner part up a little bit to give it the chimney kind of its flute. Like so. And most chimneys have kind of like a little border around them. So I'll select the border edge a little bit and just pull it out slightly like so. So that's my chimney made. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I'm not interested in chimneys right now. But I will lock it out. So that's my chimney. Why don't we talk about molding around my house now? And no, I'm not talking about mold like like you may need to get a dehumidifier kind of mold because this is black mold. No, we're talking about molding like baseboards and all that good stuff. So again, I'm going to refer back to my asset list here. And that's the kind of molding we're talking about. So I'm going to use this picture. I'm going to bring it to my other screen off the camera here. And I'm going to model a template molding based on that picture. So I'll start out with a cube, and there's only a few things I'm interested in with this cube right now. I don't care about, the only faces I care about are the top and front faces here. So I'll delete all the other faces. So I use an inverse selection to delete them all. Don't tell me I thought I had that turned off. I go to Windows, I need some preferences, go to selection, ignore selection property turned off, and there we go. Now I don't have to worry about selecting that floorboard on accident. All right, cool. So I'm going to take this top face. Top face is going to be easy to manage. I'm just going to bring it in really close here. Let's put a center pivot on this baseboard, and let's check the height of my baseboard. I think that might be a little too high. So I'm going to bring down the verts a little bit, maybe bring it about that height. That looks good. And now we're just going to be making some edge loops here to kind of give my molding some shape here. All right, so I'm kind of just inserting them willy-nilly. So what I want to do is start bringing out my baseboard and give it some decorative width. And like, let's see, do we want to follow this exactly? I wish that was turned upside down because that's kind of the ceiling part. So what we have here is, let's say that's this is upside down and that's on the floor. What we have here is a nice curve in. So I think we need a few more edges here. So that's a nice curve in. And remember, we're doing low poly modeling, so we're just kind of suggesting these shapes here. I'm not going to get too bent up with putting too many verts in there. That always leads to heartbreak. So we kind of have an S shape. So maybe this comes out a little bit. And then we bring it back in. And if I smooth it, we kind of get that curvature that we have. All right. And in fact, I'm going to do some insert edge loops so I can give my baseboard some nice creases where I want it to. So I know that's going to be a hard edge. And up here is going to be a hard edge. And that's all I really want to focus on right now. I might make another edge loop right there. Really get that crease in on that part. And just something decorative like that is all we need. And what we're going to do is we're just going to use this one baseboard piece and duplicate it a few times and make sure that it's covering the length of my floor. And then we'll duplicate it up to the ceiling. So before we do that, let's call this molding mesh 001. And here's why I always put 001 on things, because now when we start duplicating it, we get molding mesh 002. Maya kind of automatically goes with our naming convention there. So I'm just going to get lazy here and just snap my verts. I'm going to go straight through my chimney. It doesn't matter. My chimney will clip through that and you won't be able to tell the difference. It just looks flush at that point. And then I got it on that side. Then I'll duplicate it and I'll rotate it a little bit and then come up to my outliner and make sure I'm exactly 90 degrees. And then I'll position this one loosely. All right. So I'll get it clipping straight into that. And then what we get over here is we get a little bit of clipping going on right here. But for all intents and purposes, that looks like it was just cut perfectly. So that's nice. It's a nice little trick there. So I'll just snap it to that side. And then what I'll do, because I'm feeling especially lazy today, I'll just double duplicate the left side there, and then just mirror in the x-axis, and then I automatically have a perfect fitting molding going on over here. I'm going to kind of zoom in on it so I can see exactly how much I have to put it in there. And then why don't we do the same for this side? Duplicate, and then bring it over. And this time we're going to mirror -1 in the Z direction. And I immediately have some issues here, well, besides the fact that somehow my scaling got off. You know why? This is a good moment. I probably need to cancel out and freeze my transformations. Oh, that's another reason why it's kind of sticking out there. So I want to make sure that I have the exact dimensions I need, because my molding was just sticking out of the side of my house, and that's no bueno. All right, so with my molding perfectly positioned, I'm going to freeze those transformations, duplicate it this time. So now we see it's facing the wrong way. So let's scale on the Z-axis. I'm already starting to see a problem. Can you see the problem? I'm going to zoom in so I can get the right depth of this. These long pieces are unwieldy to work with. I'm getting molding going across my door. So I'm going to go in and insert edge loop. Press 1 because the sub D mode was not showing me the true position. I'm in sub D mode right now. So I'm going to press 1, and that's the true position of that. I'm going to snap it to the outline of my door here. Snap that edge loop I just made. Hold down the V key, vertex, snap it to the edge of that door, and boom. Now we get perfectly placed. But you know what? If I'm going to use the bottom of my molding to make the top, I don't have to worry about the door right there. So let's undo that. So before I really get into it, I'll leave those edge loops right there though. Before we really commit to deleting that footpath area, I don't know what you call it, entrance of the door, why don't I go ahead and select all my moldings, freeze the transformations, reset the transformations. I love my shortcuts up there. Normally you would find those in modify, freeze, and reset. But at this point, I'm assuming you guys know where these tools are, so I'm using my own shortcuts. I might, if you want to, you can learn how to do that yourself. I think basically all you do is just hold down Control and Shift and click anything in these menus over here, and you can see already I have another outliner button over here. And then you can go to your little gear mark on your shelf editor over here and bring up the shelf editor and figure that out. I'm going to get rid of that extra outliner though and delete that. Don't need it. So that's basically how I make my own shelves. It's called the Patrick shelf. It's patent pending right now. All right, so what I'm going to do now is duplicate all 4 of my moldings. So now I have 8 moldings. Bring them up. And this time we're going to do a -1 scale in the Y direction. And we're just going to, let me bring back my ceiling layer. There we go. It was hidden a little bit. And we're just going to shove it into my ceiling just a little bit. All right. That looks good. Perfect. Now, molding really makes the house come together. I'm going to bring my viewpoint 2.0. We turn on this anti-aliasing multi-point sample. There we go. Molding really brings a house together. Now it looks like we have, well, that chimney's a little simple, but like I said, I don't care about chimney right now. I don't want to do it. It looks okay. So there's the footrest of my door there, or the entryway of my door. Maybe I have my floor showing. Yes, I do. And for all intents and purposes, this house is looking pretty good. All right. If I bring back my windows, I can see my molding. The frames of my window are looking pretty good. And we got a pretty nice house to show now. There's the frame of my door covering up that molding that we just kind of cut. Not looking too bad. Great. All right. So why don't we move on to making some actual pieces of furniture here. So the rug in my house is probably going to be the hardest thing I have to model, but I'm going to try to do a pretty good job with it. So just bear with me. I'm going to be doing some technical things here. So I'm going to go to polygon primitives. I guess we'll start with a cube. So many steps to make a good rug here. And of course, you can't tell I'm being facetious. So basically, I'm just using a box to scale out the dimensions. And there we go. So now, you know what? I got all these different layers not being hidden. And oh man, all this molding. I'm going to select all my molding, group it up, call this molding. And I'm going to put all the molding on the layer with my inner wall. I'm just going to lump those two in the same layer there. All right, great. So what I'm going to do now is just select these verts. I'm going to make this really skinny. And we're just going to intersect it like so. And delete maybe the bottom face of my rug. Maybe even take the outside border edge there and maybe scale it just a little bit. So I get this nice little bevel going. And that's how thick I want my rug. Oh man, that took so long to make. Call it rug mesh 001. And I'm going to make a new group. I'm going to call this living room lay. And everything in my living room will be put on this layer. So I'll lock that down. All right, so why don't we go ahead and make my end table next? All right, 47. So the end table is going to be another simple thing to make. Let's bring back my asset list here. And what do I have for my end table or my coffee table? I think it's a coffee table that I made. Okay, that is a pretty simple shape to make. A flat box with 3 legs connected to another flat box. All right, great. Why don't we just go ahead and make that? Start with a cube like always. All right. And here we're going to keep everything somewhat visible because we want to use everything as a scale reference for scale. But I don't know, these outer walls are getting on my nerves, so are the windows and the door. So we'll get rid of that. I'll keep my chimney and my walls visible for reference. I'm not obsessing over it too much. You know, to get really feng shui about it, maybe I'll make it close to the same width as my chimney. There we go. Next, why don't we just make those legs? So I'm going to make the legs by inserting some edge loops here. The trick is to kind of get it all the same so the legs are roughly the same dimension. If you want it to be exact, you could do some mirroring, but I don't care. Me eyeing it, and I trust my 3D eye pretty good, so I'm just going to extrude these legs out now. I'm not going to go all the way into the floor. I'm just going to extrude them out a little bit. Then I'm going to delete them. Next, I'm going to delete my table in general, my whole object table, delete those legs. Now I have a hole and an empty hole. Now all I have to do is I'm going to freeze these transformations, zero them out, because now I'm going to do a -1 scale in the Y direction. Hold down D as in dog, V as in vector, and snap it to one of the corners there, and then snap it to the corner of this leg here. Mesh combined, go to vertex mode, merge verts, and now I'll just size my end table, or my coffee table. And there's the coffee table that we saw right here. Some really simple tricks of the trade to make that process lightning fast. All right, so we're going to talk about how to do the couch next. This is our first big challenging form. The reference I picked, somewhat of a simple couch to make. It's really blocky, it's kind of that minimalist modern look we see that's so popular these days. Really blocky, simple shapes. And that'll make it modeling just a little bit easier. So why don't we get into that real quick. So why don't we start out by making this couch with another cube here. All right. And to make this couch modeling process a little bit easier, I'm not going to worry about scale starting out. I'm just going to worry about making everything in my scene invisible so I can make use of the mirroring workflow that we've used in the past. Because I'm just going to make one half of my couch and then mirror over the next part. So modeling something in the center of my scene here will be very important to that endeavor. All right, so this cube will basically start comprising the armrest of my couch here. So I need to bring that armrest up a little bit. So I'll increase the height. And really, I'm just worried about proportions only in related to the context of the couch itself. So that looks to be about pretty good there. Next, I'm going to focus on making some edge loops that start defining the shape of my couch here. So why don't we make an edge loop that describes the back side of my couch, and an edge loop that describes the seat of my couch. And from here, we can just extrude those faces out, like so. And to get this mirrored correctly, I'm going to hold D and V and snap my handle, pivot point, to the middle of my couch. Get rid of those faces on the inside. And now I got my couch ready to rock and roll. Next, I'm going to if I look at my reference image, I see I have a back part of my couch coming up separate from my armrest. So we'll just extrude that up a little bit. And it was kind of angled, so I'll grab these front two verts, bring them back like so. And since that was angled, maybe we need to angle that right there. Let's just continue that angle roughly like that. Just pushing these verts in and out. And I'm using as little topology as possible. I'm trying to keep this very vert empty. I don't want to have too many verts messing up the design of my couch. So I'm going to be switching between 1 and 3, go between the different sub D modes. All right. Next, why don't I start inserting some edge loops so I can give my couch a little bit more form. So there's the front of my couch, defining the armchair right here. And I'm previewing every single edge loop I make. So it's really just a matter of coming in and basically adding an edge loop everywhere I want a defining harder edge. And then down the back of my couch, let's define that part right there. And it's still a little too flat, so I'll do an edge loop down the front. See the progress I've made? We're seeing a weird kind of creasing going on right there. So why don't I do an edge loop down the fronts of my armrest. And that kind of fixes that weird little creasing area there. Oh, looks like we still have a face right here. I need to get rid of that face. All right. Well, we see another little crease right here, so we need to put a little edge loop right there, right in front. That keeps that from being a problem. And I made a mistake. I need to delete this edge loop because these edge loops at the bottom here, because I need to make the feet of my couch. Let me refer to my photo reference. I have little small feet coming out at the bottom of my couch here that pulls it up off the floor. So I already have the front of there. I need to do another little edge loop right there. That looks like something I could extrude off the bottom, and I need to do the same back here. So getting those edge loops out of the way, I got a little overzealous. Now I can get to the original shape of the couch, so I can extrude these feet down a little bit more. All right. And in fact, I'm going to extrude both of these at the same time. I'm going to use my extrusion handle here and then press squares so I can bring up. And now I can scale them both at the same time because it's a little scaled downward like that. And then you go back and put these edge loops back in where they were. All right, the front. And then I need to do some edge loops just for the foot of my couch here. It's really easy to lose track of where you're putting your edge loops, so you just got to make sure you're not leaving out any of the areas here. And that's why I'm constantly going to object mode, and just looking at the shape of my couch to make sure we're not forgetting any edge loops. Because we're just looking at places where we're getting that weird sub-decreasing, and an edge loop fixes that up for us. And now here's another interesting thing to consider with your edge loops. This is making my couch look really angular and really sharp now, but this is fabric. It's a little bit softer. So I'm going to select these edge loops, double click them, and I'm going to kind of give a little bit more space at my corners here. Make it look a little bit more round, a little bit softer. That's good. I was making my edge loops too tight for what kind of object this was. All right, I need to do the same. Well, dang it. That's messing up the shape. So why don't I go to slide edge tool and use middle mouse to bring it down a little bit. There we go. Snapping tolerance is getting in my way there. It's either snapping to the thing or not coming down far enough. There we go. I'm sliding that edge down to retain the form. I'll do the same for this guy right here. Just sliding my edges rather than moving them. That way I can retain the form that I like, that I had earlier. That one's looking a little crazy, so I'll just leave it be. There we go. That's a little bit more, that's a little bit of a softer touch there. All right. I'm not going to duplicate my couch yet because I'm going to make my cushions next. So I'll go to Create Cube. Cushions are going to be easy for this guy. I'm just going to make this cube. First, I'm going to size them, and you could use a scale tool, but being able to use verts, you get finer control exactly where you want these cushions to be going. How big you want the cushions. So I'm going to leave a little bit of a space right there. And then, yep, we're going to do edge loops on the cushion here. Remember, we don't want them too sharp, so we're going to give a wide berth to my edges. And there we go. And since these are cushions, I'm going to add a little bit of a flourish here. I'm going to create a few more edge loops here and there. Oop. So this is another problem of working with many objects. Sometimes you can just select the wrong things. So with this extra geometry, I'm going to come in here and just add subtle differences. It's going to push and pull these verts a little bit. That'll give See, sometimes you kind of want creases here and there. In fact, I might want to push this in a little bit. I'm going to pull this one out like it's been sat on, so it's kind of warped at that edge right there. So now we kind of have a little bit of variation on my couch cushion. Just really subtle stuff. And I'm going to duplicate this again. I'm going to use that same cushion to make the back of my couch. Place it like right so. How tall was this cushion here? It was a little bit taller than that back part there, so I will have to resize this guy a little bit. So I'm going to go in, select just those top parts, come in, and just kind of shrink it a little bit. You know what? Since this couch kind of has that area, I might want to rotate that back a little bit. Maybe the couch kind of has a natural bend from people constantly sitting on it on the back like that. And I'm going to keep these cushions whole. I'm not going to worry about putting any holes with them with a duplicate. So there's my finished couch. I'm never going to smooth something in this whole assignment. So if you're thinking, ooh, now I can go in and smooth it and make it. No, we're going to leave things as they are and just keep them in sub D mode for our presentation. So just hit 3, keep it at 3. Freeze the transforms, reset the transform. So now my pivot point is in the center of my grid here. Hit Control D to copy. -1 along the X. And there's my couch made. Why don't I combine the meshes now and merge them? With my low tolerance, I was able to kind of just nicely merge. So you might be asking yourself, you're leaving out some detail, like those aren't completely flat. So why don't we go in and describe that right there. So I just inserted another little edge loop right there. And then with that edge loop selected, making sure I only have the edges I want, the handle will let you know. See, the handle is kind of in the middle here, so that leads me to believe that I had some faces back there. So when I deselected those, I was able to come in here and give it that little crease. Maybe exaggerate it a little bit. And I can even add some more edge loops around it to support that crease even more. There we go. Oh, it's not copied over, so why don't I redo that? I should have done this before I mirrored it, huh? That's okay. We live and learn. Put another little edge loop there to reinforce that hard edge. And there we go. That's the finished couch. So let's go to my outliner. And just if I don't show it, I always finish things out by cleaning up my history. So edit mesh, delete all, or edit, delete all by type history. And then I rename it. And then I group it in the right layer. So there we go. Now what I want to bring back my house a little bit is now I need to position my couch and scale it so it's kind of in the right size. This couch is looking a little small right now. Why don't I rotate it over? I'm not going to go completely 90 degrees because a human placed this couch. So he's not going to rotate it exactly 90 degrees there. I think my couch needs to be a little bit bigger. There we go. Kind of running out of room in my living room here. Oh, my rug needs to be bigger. I don't have to go to the store and buy a new bigger rug. I can just scale it. All right, why don't we position my couch, center it up. feng shui the heck out of it. And now, as soon as you walk in, you see a clear division from the living room to the rest of the house by just a nice little decoration. Nice placement of everything right there. All right, now's a good time to save. Probably should have saved sooner. So house 001 will now become house 002. I'm saving as a maya.ma. Iterative saving. If one file gets corrupt, you have all those other old files that you can start over from. You don't have to redo the whole house. Wouldn't that stink? That would stink. All right, so there is my couch done. So why don't we talk about the kitchen now? Another part of the parameters were to make cabinets for my kitchen. So why don't we just get in to making those real quick? And I'm going to hide my living room. I'm going to hide my chimney and get rid of my windows and door. I just really need my wall and my floor as reference points right now. Is my ceiling shown? I'll get rid of my ceiling too. Backface culling is really coming in handy right now. All right, so let's just get into making my cabinets. Before I start, I am going to refer to counters. I'm going to refer to my reference photo. All right, great. So now I can see that I kind of have a marble top finish to my counter, and I have these drawers that I need to pay special consideration to. And I don't know if you can see them in the video, but these doors have kind of a beveled decorative edge to them. So they're not just simply flat cubes with generic candles on them. They have a little bit of decoration on them. So I'm going to use this design of these cabinets and just put them along this back wall right here. I'm going to put my refrigerator right here. I'll put my cabinets and sink right there. Like all good models, we start with a cube. Good old box modeling. And why don't we just get into this by defining the dimensions here. I want to get it really close to that back wall. Let's bring it out to about right there. If you wanted to be exact, you could look up standard dimensions for cabinets and counters and stuff like that, but I'm just going to wing it right now, partly because I've already done it. But in fact, you know what? I am going to go into my side view here. I want to see how many feet my cabinets are going to be, how tall my cabinet's going to be. So every one of these squares is a foot, because I've set my measurements to feet. So 1, 2, 3, say about almost 4 feet, 3.5 feet, 3 3/4. I'm fine with that height. Well, I don't know. Maybe we should go up a little bit more and make it more like 4. Right below our windows, basically. Using our windows as a nice guide for that. All right. First thing I'm going to do with my cabinets is I'm going to create an edge loop down here at the bottom, because my cabinet comes out a little bit there at the bottom. I think I've made these too deep. I've definitely made these too. No way you can get to the sink from there. So there we go. So now I have that nice little outlet right there. And I'm not going to worry about calling this anything right now, but I am going to make a kitchen layer. Save it. Add it. Lock it down. So now I'm going to use this as my guide to putting on my cabinets and drawers. So polygon cube. Let's make my drawers. I'm going to start out by making the larger cabinet drawer, or cabinet door rather. So I'll snap the back part and flush with the cabinet and bring that back. It's maybe a little too thin, so I'll bring it up. Now I'm going to just use my verts to scale it right above the outlet right there, and giving myself a nice little berth there. I'm not going to come up all the way because we have a horizontal drawer that we have to consider, but that looks pretty good. In fact, I'm going to push it in a little bit control my depth of my counter just by, and delete the back side of that face. So I'm going to give this that nice bevel we saw. I'm going to undo that. Instead of using the scale tool, I'm going to use the thickness setting here. Oh, not thickness, that's extruding it out. Offset is what I'm looking for. So offset's a nice little tool to use rather than just scaling from the center. Let's look what happens if we just scale from the center. The top part is wider than the side parts in that extrusion. These two guys are wider. So that's not what we want. We want a nice, even offset all the way around. So offset keeps it the same size no matter what. So there's that little bevel we're talking about, and then I'm just going to bring it straight out. And I'm going to make sure my normals are hardened on that guy. And that's my cabinet door. Now I'm going to create the handle simply by going to Polygon Primitives, Cylinder. Let's do about 10 divisions, that'll be fine. So there's my cylinder made. I'm just going to snap it over to there. So I'll hold down V and it'll snap. This is a quick way to getting it into the position we want. And from here, it's just a matter of scaling and getting the right proportion of this handle we're about to make. And I want to bring back my, all right, get a feel for the size of this thing. That's looking good. That's a little too far out. And I'm going to select all the edges up and down of my cylinder and soften them. So soften those normals. I'm going to freeze them. Get rid of, zero that channel box out over here. So when I duplicate over here, it's just a simple matter of scaling and rotating the parts that connect to the actual door here. Duplicate that down. And that's my cabinet door. All right, great. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to combine this handle, and I'm going to make the horizontal shelf next. So I'll go to Combine, Center Pivot. I'm making heavy use of intersecting geometry in this project. I'm not going to focus on making everything seamless. It was a nice exercise in the household prop, just so we can get used to merging and managing our models here. But now we're worried about an overall picture, so we're not going to worry too much about seamless, watertight models. So I'm going to actually duplicate this bottom door, and I'm not going to scale. I'm actually going to push and pull these verts here because that's what we need to keep that bevel exactly in the right dimension. If I scaled it, that decorative bevel would have gotten all out of whack. And then I'll position this handle kind of right in the center here. Oh, I forgot to duplicate it. Duplicate that handle. 90 degrees over in the channel box. All right. And I'm not going to bother with mirror duplicating. I'm just going to duplicate and push around. And now this will really inform me about how long the horizontal should be. All right, great. Now I'm just going to select every single one of these guys right here, because you can see there's a theme of it duplicating, the same design throughout. So that'll just let me do the same thing here. And this is my cabinet, so I'm going to make it however I want to. All right, great. And those are my cabinets made. So I'm going to unlock the kitchen layer so I can now select my whole cabinet unit. And in this chapter, I'm going to, instead of just grouping things, we have a lot of stuff going on, a lot of different parts here. I could just group them and call this cabinet group over here in my outliner. Let me delete that history. Call this cabinet GRP. But since this is kind of like one singular model, I have a feeling I'm going to be okay with combining it all, and then delete that history, get rid of that group, and I'm just going to call this cabinet mesh 001. And anytime where I need to go in and maybe pick some parts of this or really get in and start editing this more, all I have to do is just go to mesh separate. And I mean, not only do I separate all the models here, but my group is now made in the outliner, and it's even called cabinet mesh group, and all my parts and pieces are here. So that's why I'm not too worried about combining models like so. All right, so let's talk about sync, the sync of this guy right here. Sync's kind of got a special relationship with counter because the sync goes into my counter. So what we need to do is we need to, I don't know, maybe make a hole for my sync to set into. All right, so I got that going on. Then I'll extrude right here. And I'm kind of already starting to define the shape of my sink. You can see right here. Kind of push it towards the front because I need some space for my fixtures. And you don't want to be too far away from your sink. You don't want to be leaning over the counter too far. And I want to make it a little bit wider. All right, that's great. So what I can do now is I can extract this face and use it as the base of my actual sink instead of start from another cube. So I'll go to mesh, edit mesh, and extract that face. And there's my face there. That does something interesting over my outliner. It breaks up my cabinet mesh group. And I now have two generically named objects here. First, I'm going to delete my history, get rid of all those random groups that we don't need. Middle mouse drag and pull it out of here. So now my sink is outside of my cabinet group. I'm going to double click this, copy and paste that name. Do the same thing over here. I'm going to delete that cabinet mesh group, and I'm going to paste that cabinet mesh name back on to what I wanted over here in my outliner. So now, I need to put my cabinet mesh back into my kitchen layer because I edited it, and it went out of my group here. So sink time. Let's make a sink. So I'm going to raise it up off the surface a little bit, and I'm going to extrude these edges out a little bit and push them in. And that's kind of our surface of our sink, or the the outside beveled edge there. But I don't want it too far down, so I'm going to snap it to the top of my cabinet and just push it down a little bit. Then I'm going to go ahead and account for my fixtures. So I'm going to put an edge loop right here, snap it to grid so I can get a straight up and down line here. And I'm going to pull these verts back. I'm kind of getting ready for the surface for where my faucet and handles are going to go on my sink right there. All right, cool. Now I can actually go in and start extruding this face down. And I'm going to use very few polygons here. I'm going to let sub D mode do most of the work for me. And from here, it's just a matter of inserting some nice edge loops to start defining the shape of your sink. Like so, vertically and horizontally around the corners. And don't neglect back here. And don't neglect right where the back of my sink comes. Uh-oh, look what we're getting. We're getting weird geometry creases right there. How do we fix it? Well, and here is a problem. Backface culling has lied to us. We thought we had perfect extrusions going on, but let's go to shading and turn backface cull. Oh my goodness. What a world we live in. Is this salvageable? Yeah, I'm just going to grow my... I'm just going to have to go in and delete these random faces we got. Maybe we made an extra extrusion somewhere, but either way, back face culling is a cruel mistress to us. Oh, everything is just all messed up now. So let's salvage this. So basically I'm just getting rid of all the wonky geometry, and I'm left with this abomination. So all's not lost. All we have to do is rebuild it just a little bit. So we'll do that by using edge extrusions. So I'll select the edges along the back side of my sink here. I'll extrude and snap it to the back side of my sink right there. And it looks like we're even having more issues. See, if our back face culling would have been on, we would have caught that easy. There we go. I'm saving it little by little. Oh, those extrusions. It got us in the end, didn't it? All right. That's looking good for the most part. All right, let's finish rebuilding this side over here. So it's pretty easy. It's just a simple matter of extruding the edges that you had to delete. So I'll extrude once to get that. Extrude again to get over here. And then this is an interesting conundrum. We got some inset faces, or just zero length faces right here. It's always nice to go in and figure out how to do this stuff. Sub D mode is really letting us see where all these inset faces are. So we see one right there. We even see like extra just verts floating around. So with sub D mode selected, I can see where these zero length faces are. All right. In fact, I want to hide my kitchen layer so I can see exactly what's going on here. Or you could just select your whole model, and since these zero length faces are riding right on where my verts are, boom, we've merged them all. They're no longer an issue because they were just riding right on top of each other. So zero width and length faces can easily be rectified by just merging your model. So I'll extrude that last back face right there and bring down the back of my sink. So we're snapping vertically and horizontally. And you know what? I'm not going to extrude there. I'm going to use my append to polygon tool. Append to polygon right near the extrude button. All right, we got one extra little face here that's giving us trouble. So this is just turning into a nightmare, but we're going to persevere. We're not going to give up. We're going to fix models. We're learning to fix mistakes. So I'm going to extrude that down right there. I'll come back to those weird faces in a second. I want to make sure I'm getting the shape of my model perfectly made. So that's weird. Well, I'm just going to snap that vert like so. Merge. Merge those again. Apparently I just didn't catch all the verts when I was doing that first merge. So you see what I was doing? We have these weird faces that are just kind of sitting in here. But yet when we're in one mode, regular poly mode, we don't see all these extra faces and edges and stuff. But sub D mode reveals the ugly topology below. Since I can't really see them, I'm going to assume that the verts of all these inset faces, zero-length faces, are sitting on top of each other. So with a low tolerance threshold on my vert merge, it's going to merge them all. And now those faces don't exist anymore. And I can continue on with my sink. There we go. Perfect. Now all we have to do to fix this crease that originally led us to finding out that back face culling betrayed us. I just kind of go in here and insert the edge loop around the corner there. All right. Are we missing an edge loop, guys? Indeed we are. We're missing it on the outside here. I'm going to create a perfect border around your corners there. Let's bring back my kitchen. And there's a nice little sink made. Let's do one more thing. Why don't we make a little hole, drainage hole for my faucet here. So I'll shrink this down like so. And I'm going to come in and snap that whole edge loop to make it perfectly flat. Remember, I have this retained component spacing turned off, so I'll exaggerate that. Here's a nice little learning. So you see how that is just kind of like at an angle now? Just following the contour of my sink. With return component spacing turned off, anytime I snap it to something, look how straight it gets. And that's what I want. I'm just doing that because when I come down here, I can now scale these in. Oh, and it's looking like my edge isn't completely centered here. Just snapping things so they're all symmetrical. And then we can just extrude this down. Not down, but yeah, there we go. That's not looking like much until we come in here and add some edge loops to really define this hole. And that's where the water drains out. All right, we're not quite done yet. Why don't we go and start making our faucets and fixtures? So I'm going to add my sink to that. And then we're going to tackle where the water comes out of this thing. Because right now we just kind of have a basin, no water coming out. So everything on their own layer, I'm not going to be accidentally selecting things. And I'm going to make sure that for right now my back face culling is still turned off. And since my walls are serve their purpose for positioning the dimensions of my cabinet, I can hide those walls now. In fact, I can hide my floor too. We're just working with my cabinet right now. So why don't we use some NURBS tools to make a really nice faucet. All right. So first I'm going to create a NURBS circle. It's huge. I'm going to snap it over here on top of my sink there. Maybe snap it right on that middle place. And then I'm going to adjust its width. This is going to be the diameter of my faucet here. So that looks pretty wide right there. And then I'm going to come in, which side? That's the front view. Here's the side view of my sink. Now I'm going to create curve tools using the CV tool. And I'm going to create a perfectly curved faucet. So kind of giving myself some control vertices to work with going up. Boom. I almost got it exactly right. There we go. We're just adjusting the control vertices to get the shape perfectly right. In fact, I'm going to select all of these control vertices except the starting one. Control V. And you can actually snap the vertices on this curve because we're using control vertices. So that's handy. We can snap vertices on this curve. Now all that's left to do is make sure that we made the path of my curve perfectly where we want to. So I'm going to put it right there. Snap this. And I need to get the center of my diameter circle in with the center of my, well, shoot. Well, we're gonna make use of a new snapping tool, a snapping shortcut called C curve snap. So the trick is you kind of got to get it close to the curve, and then when you hold C, it'll magnetically snap to it. And I'm just traveling along the path of this curve right now by holding down C and moving it up and down. So now I know I'm snapped at the very end of my curve here. All right, so let's do a surface extrusion. Select my diameter first, and then my path second. Go to surfaces. Let's bring up my extra menus. We want to go, let's reset the settings. We want to do at path and follow the path direction. And voila, nicely made faucet. And in fact, since we want to keep everything in polygons, we can go ahead and do output geometry as polygons, do quads. And I'm just going to get lazy and do a count. Let's say 500 polygons. Nah, I don't want to get too lazy. We go to quads and do general. And then I'm going to come down here, and then the U and V type controls how many divisions in each direction. So to figure out which one's which, I'm going to make one super dense and the other one not. So the U controls how many edges discuss or make up the diameter of my pipe here, how many spans of my pipe. So let's keep it in 10. And then the V describes the shape, how many vertical spans or horizontal. It's hard to say vertical or horizontal because they're horizontal here, then they're vertical here. That's why we use the designation U and V. I think 100 is a little overkill there, though. Let's try something like 40. And we still see a little bit of weird artifacting. I'm not going to sub-D this, so I want to make sure I have enough geometry to perfectly describe this faucet. So I'm going to do 60. There we go. No need to sub-D that. It looks pretty good. And I got polygons. So I like what I see. So I'm going to go to Edit, Delete All by Type History to unattach my curve from my actual faucet model. And I'm just going to get rid of those curves there. All right. Now we have a little bit of work to do here. We need to make the end of my faucet. I'm just going to scale in that extrusion and then scale up a little bit. And I'll just leave it kind of open. I'm not going to worry about. We'll just leave that open. Not too many people are going to look in there. Well, maybe I am going to sub-D it because when I do that, I can add some edge loops here. Now I get a nice, perfect faucet. It's a little wonky, I guess, but we get obsessed over everything. But that looks pretty good. Looks like a faucet to me. So why don't we talk about the handles on my sink here. All right, the handles are what's going to be what's going to, turn the sink on and off here. That's what the handles I'm referring to. So I'm basically going to just start with a cylinder. And I'll do a 10 cylinder. We won't use nerves for this part because we want to create some special handles. We want to be able to control our destiny more. All right, so I'm going to start out with a cylinder at the base here. And I'm going to size it just so. In fact, you know what? I'm going to add a little bit of spice to this faucet here. I'm going to scale that up. Make it look a little fancier. And put some edge loops in there. There, now it's not just a simple tube. It's got something going on. I'm going to move this up a little bit. There we go. All right. So I could start with a cylinder, or I could start with the faucet. Let's do that. Now that I like that little base I made for my faucet, so I'm going to use that as the basis for my handle here. So I'll start out by scaling it down. My handles are going to be a little bit smaller than the base of my faucet. And then I'm just going to get rid of all these faces I don't want. I really just was interested in this guy right here. All right, cool. In fact, I want to get rid of those faces. I want to make sure that the loop I'm working with is straight up and down. All right, so I'm going to make a nice handle here. The next thing I'm going to do is use the append tool to close off the top of my handle. Got a weird little triangle there. That's okay though. And then we're going to come in and we're going to actually, I don't want to wedge that. I want to insert an edge loop. Here's the little nub of my handle. Let's do something like that. In fact, I want to give it a more elegant curvature. So that looks weird, but now I got a straight up and down edge. And I'm going to scale it in a little bit. And I'll scale that side into a little bit. Now I'm going to extrude all of these faces to make a big, this is where you're going to put your hand. And I'm going to scale it down. I'm even going to rotate it up. Now I'm going to put some edge loops in here. And that's a cool little looking handle. Support edge loop it right there, and maybe right there. Maybe just leave that doing what it's doing. I like that. I like this little fall off and curvature here. All right, that's my handle. But before I duplicate it and mirror it over, I'll freeze those transforms. -1 and the Z. Those are a little too far forward. I'll pull them back. And there is my sink there. All right, nice. So I'm going to select all these, select my fixtures and my sink. Why don't I just merge them all together? Do the same thing we did with the cabinet, just make my sink one big guy. I'm cool with you guys doing that as long as you come into your outliner and name it. All right. All right, so my sink is made. Why don't I add that sink to my kitchen layer now? Well, actually, my kitchen's not made because I was supposed to make counters or cabinets and a sink and then an appliance of my choice. So I'm going to make a refrigerator, and that's not visible here. So I guess I found another picture for the refrigerator I want to make. Refrigerator. Let's look at this one. And boom, there we go. There's some few things we have to consider with this refrigerator. All right. So the refrigerator has a few cool things about it. It has these doors that kind of extrude out from the main body. We have a little seam separation there. And then this ice maker will be a pretty fun thing to make. So why don't we figure out how we can do all that? I'll start out with, can you guess what? Cube. That'll be nice. All right, so let's get the dimensions of my refrigerator going. First of all, I'm just going to snap these verts to the bottom of my cabinet. Snap these back verts to the back of my cabinet over there. And then I can come in here and really just push and pull these verts get the width. And you know what? Bringing up the walls might help here because I'm going to have to fit this refrigerator in between my walls. All right, so I'm going to bring these out a little bit. And I'm going to roughly get the refrigerator the same depth as my counters. And I'm going to bring it up like so. That's always thrown me off about this setup right here. It's not centered. I'm going to center these cabinets in between the windows here. All right, great. You know what? I'm going to make my refrigerator perfectly. Oh, but you know what? We got to consider the molding of my windows. So I guess I'm going to have to fit them in between the molding. I'm going to go with this shape right here. And that's where we're going to start from. Let's bring up my refrigerator one more time. So why don't we make the extruded outside edge of my doors now? All right. I want to go ahead and insert an edge loop right in the center of my refrigerator. Might be a little bit hard to get it right in the center because we're not in the middle of the grid here, but we'll do our best. I think that's about good. That'll be the separation for my two doors. And I'm just going to put one on the outside here. And then we're simply just going to extrude around right here. And we're not going to select the bottom because I would clip through the floor. And this time we are going to adjust the thickness, not the offset. All right, so those are my doors of my refrigerator coming out. Like so. All right, why don't we make that ice maker next? Or you know what? Why don't we make a seam for my doors? So I need to select just the faces going down the center of my refrigerator. So I'll select the top two so I know which faces we're dealing with. Then I'll go to the top view of my scene here. And I'll just select the faces all the way down here. And that does a good job there. Oh, it looks like I'm getting these. I don't want those. And what we're going to do is we're going to extrude. And let's bring my thickness in. Oh, forgot to get those faces. Extrude thickness in. All right. And yeah, this is a single mesh, so, might be a little weird. Oh, it looks like we got overlapping faces there. Do an inverse selection. Delete those overlapping faces. Oh, then we got this black face staring at us. I'll just delete those. Oh, then we have a hole. Okay, well, I guess we'll just have to go in and extrude these edges here. Boom. Extruded edges and merged them. That looks weird. You know why? Because we got an N-gon now. Gosh, if it's not one thing, it's another thing. So I'm just going to insert an edge loop. That'll give me some vertices to merge to. And now we don't have a stupid looking bottom anymore. All right, great. So when I want to continue my theme of edge looping, I'm going to define the dimensions of, oh, look at that curve upwards. I'm going to snap it to vertice, straighten out with retaining component and spacing. Turned off, snap it. Oh, that seems up a good idea to save. All right, cool. So this is how tall I want it. How wide do I want it now? Let's do something like that. Snap these edge loops. I want that edge loop completely vertical all the way around. And then you can come out from a distance and eye it a little bit. All right, great. Oh my God, what did I just do? I think I extruded real quick on accident, so I'll undo all that. All right, cool. Now I'm going to extrude out, and I give myself the outside of my ice maker. Now I'm going to extrude in for the inside of my ice maker. Now it's a simple matter of edge looping the heck out of everything. Edge looping around the corners here. All right. And then let's just edge loop the whole refrigerator. It's a little soft right there. Let me harden this up. Now this is an instance where maybe getting a little bit sharper would serve us well because it's metal. Really just floating in and out of 1 and 0 mode just to make sure we're getting all the right edge loops in all the right places. The back of my refrigerator needs one. Boom. I'm guessing the floor needs one. Oh, and we're getting some weird creases going on here. See it right there? Let's ring that in. We need to cage that in. I needed an edge loop right above it. There we go. I'm going to leave that empty for right now. I don't want to spend too much time making detail, smaller detail like that, but it's just a simple matter of looking at your reference images and doing the little pushback things, and so you complete the effect a little bit. Because I need to move on to making these handles. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cheat. I already have a handle made on my cabinet here. Let me get rid of these walls. I've already used them. But I can't. But they're connected to this whole cabinet. I'm going to delete the whole or duplicate the whole cabinet, and I'm just going to select the handles that I want, just the handles, and I'm going to inverse select everything else, delete it, and now I've duplicated that cabinet and isolated the handle that I want, because now I can use it for my refrigerator. A little bit of help. All right, so let's get it. I think that might be a little too thick. That looks good. So why don't we adjust the height of my handles? It kind of goes all the way up there, all the way down there. And I'll select the verts of the connectors. Handle of my fridge is made. Just duplicate it on over. Select my whole fridge, combine, open up my outliner, delete all history, call this refrigerator, or I'll just call it fridge, and add that to the kitchen layer. And there are the 3 pieces of my kitchen that I'm requiring for you guys. Awesome. All right, let's bring back everything and take a look at what we got so far. I'll go to shading and turn backface culling back on. Alright, so I'm going to make a dining room area, kind of like right here. So I'm going to make a dining room table, some chairs, and a chandelier. So let's get started on that next. So let's make that table now. So I'm going to go back to my asset list. And let's see what kind of table I decided to make. There we go. This is a funny little table. It has some interesting geometry going on. The legs have some interesting curvature work going on, so it's a little bit more ornate, a little bit more interesting than it's just a standard table. All right, so let's go ahead and make that. Again, I'll kind of leave my house the way it is. And why don't I get the top of my table made first in the context of my house here, so I can get the dimensions properly suited. All right, so I'll bring it just right beyond there. I'm going to bring it up to about waist height rather. Scale it to be about so long. And let's make some depth. That's a little too tall, I think, actually. And why don't I do a center pivot so I can, there we go, make it a little bit smaller. All right, so now that I got the kind of dimensions I want for my table here, I'm going to hide everything because I'm going to be using some mirror duplication for this guy. So I'm not going to mess with the height. I'm going to keep the height where it is, but I am going to do a center pivot again to make sure I'm right in the center of my table. And I'm going to center it when I do a top view so I can see exactly where my 0 axes are. And I'm going to center it on the X and Z axis. So now that my table's centered right in the X and Z, I'm going to keep it at the Y so I know how tall I can make my table. Actually, I'm going to bring it down just a little bit even more. I'm just guessing at that, but I think it'll work. And I'm going to zero out my channel box by freezing my transformations. Modify freeze transformations right there. And I'm going to keep an eye on my concept art or my reference image. I'm going to go ahead and make the center vertical wooden beam and the end one. Go ahead and make the legs. Go ahead and get the simple legs made. I'm tired of always starting brand new from a cube, so I'm just going to duplicate that. Because now I'm going to have direct control over my verts to make it exactly what I want. So I'm going to put it right there. Do it right there. Right there. All right. And place it kind of on the edge corner of my table. Bring it down like so. And why don't I position this right in the center? Bring this one up. And why don't I go ahead and do the horizontal one? Let's do a 90-degree angle rotation right there. Bring in those verts, kind of get it, snap it to my tables. Looks like my verts got off a little bit in the center here, so I'll select that. And since I will be mirror duplicating this one, I'm going to select just this end face right here, delete it. Something I'm noticing with the dimensions of my table, I'm not giving myself much room to work with this interesting detail right here. See how narrow I have it right there? So either I have my legs too thick or my table's not deep enough. So why don't I fix that? That's a simple fix. That's looking a little bit closer to what I want. And I want to scale this down a little bit. I want it to kind of be a little bit smaller so you can see that the woodworker was kind of just insetting it like so. I think I need to pull that up to like right there. Well, let's look at the reference image again. It almost looks completely flush though right there. So maybe I need to do something like this. Snap it to the top of that one. And then since I scaled this down to fit in that one, looks like I need to scale this table. So I'm going to select the verts on this side, snap them to the dimensions of this beam right there. And now I kind of have a seamless design going on here. Inset right there, flush on these two right there because I snapped those verts. So I'm going to look at it from, let's see, what view do we want? We want to look at it from the side here. So I can make this nice little curved pattern here. So what's interesting is it curves. We have a vertical piece right here, and then it curves into it. So we know exactly how this curves. Why don't we go ahead and make this vertical? So I'm going to snap the pivot point by holding down D and the V key. Snap my pivot point to this end of that right there, and then I'm going to kind of inset it in. We'll figure out how to make these shapes flush with one another in a second. So I'm kind of just insetting them right now. I'm going to use my multi-cut tool right now. I'm going to hold down Shift. I'm going to slice right in line with these details right here. Great. So since I've sliced, hold down Shift outside of the model. It slices it all the way through. So now I get kind of a perfect shape for this piece right here. That's good stuff. So now I can take this and kind of, let's look at my concept art once more. There's a little bit of room right there, which looks like we got. And then it just kind of curves up. Where does it curve up to? Kind of towards the top part of this diagonal beam. So let's rotate it up a little bit more. So right there. All right. So I'm going to use my multi-cut tool again. Outside of my model, I'm going to hold down Shift and just drag straight down. And then this one's a little bit more interesting. Shift allows you to snap, but I don't need to snap here because it's not completely like, I can't get that snap angle exactly to match up with this table. So I'm just going to click outside of my model and just slice. I'm going to zoom in so I can get it perfect. Start out right there and then go somewhere like right there. So now I got perfect dimensions on this. And then I'm actually going to go to my multi-cut tool again, and I'm going to make a few more slices. There we go. Why did I slice? Why didn't I just insert an edge loop tool? Because look, we're kind of getting it's kind of following the contours of my, and that, I don't know how much I like that. Because I want verticals, so all I have to do now to get that curvature is just boom, boom, and boom. Wait, I think I had it like right there. Bring it slightly up. Then I guess I can just idle. I guess after all, I did get these kind of slanted edge loops. That looks good. Ugh, it's getting fatter up top there. It's not what I want. I'm going to try to keep the same width. There we go. There's that perfect shape. Alright, so now all I have to do is select all the pieces I want to mirror across the z-axis. I'll freeze those transforms, duplicate, -1 scale on the z. That was terrible. I forgot to reset my transform, so now all the pivot points are right in the center of my grid, like so. And now it's a simple matter of, well, I guess I need to put the center of this table. I think that table is a little too long, to be honest, from what I believe. So I'm just snapping the width now, making a new length of my table, but snapping these verts in the center of the grid for mirror duplication. All right, freeze, reset, Control D to duplicate, -1 across the Z, and merge. And we're just going to merge all the verts. What's going on here? Don't tell me I had inset faces. Sub D mode reveals all. And faces in there that need to be purged. All right. That looks pretty good. I don't feel like I need to sub D that. Yeah, I'm getting some sharp corners right there, but I'll live with it. I'll go ahead and just call the table done. So I'll go to my outliner now. Oh, so many of these terrible groups. Delete history though, and then delete all the other groups that didn't get rid of themselves whenever I deleted history, and call this table mesh 001. And now let's bring back my wall here. And now I can position the table exactly where I want it. Okay. Looks pretty good. Is that a little tall for the table, maybe? But if I scale it down, it kind of messes with the shapes of everything. I'll be content with that, though. There we go. Now freeze, reset. I'm probably going to end up undoing that eventually. Why don't we look at how tall it is again? One, or about half. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is this table really 5 feet tall? That's no good. Yeah, so I will end up scaling it down like so. There we go. I don't know. I can't decide what to do with this table. I'm going to quit harping on it. All right, so that's my table done. Let's go back to my asset list. All right, so now I have this chair to do. And let's just bring up the image for my chair. Spindleback chair. It'll be an interesting shape to make. The main considerations here are creating this nice border piece around here, making sure all my spindles intersect properly so we're not seeing a spindle just clipping out garishly on the back of my chair here. All right. So again, I need to make a layer for my table here. So here's my living room or dining room lay. All right, so why don't I go ahead and start with a new cube. I'll scale it up to be about 2 feet by 2 feet, a little bit under. And we're going to make a lot of intersecting pieces here. All right. Now I got to figure out the shape of this chair. The seat of my chair here. So I'll do about that thick. All right, so it's kind of roundish, but not quite. So why don't we account for that? Do some insert edge loops right there and right there. So to kind of get that roundness, but not quite roundness, we'll just kind of pull out some detail right there. There we go. And since it's a chair, I'm going to kind of curve it down like so. for the tushy to sit. All right, cool. I'm going to go ahead and, you know what? I'm going to make a temporary layer right now because I want to be able to isolate this, but not put it on my dining room level layer and have it be hidden. All right, now is the time for the back of my chair here. So I need to have a few considerations to make here. Should I do this by hand or should I use an extrude? Let's try it by hand. We'll see what the difference between extrusion using NURBS and then using a polygonal modeling workflow to create something that the extrude can do. So first I'll go ahead and I'll use a mirror duplication workflow. Let's get it a little bit thinner than it is wide. And we're ready to start extruding this bad boy. So is that the side or the front? This is the front. So that's my trying to get orientated. Okay, so that's actually the front of my chair. So I'm going to slide this back over here. All right. So I'm going to take this top face here and just extrude it up. Okay. Now I'm going to start building my curvature using the extrusion tool. I'm just going to go ahead and make a really blocky version of this. I can go and add some edge loops later to flesh out this shape. Okay. Something's happening here. Looks like we extruded one too many times. Easy fix. Just select all the verts, merge them. All right. It was keeping me from making some really nice edge extrusions. Well, what's going on here? So we have another topology issue here. Oh my goodness. Back face choline. You swine. I imagine that's going to be the death of me one day. All right. Let's see if we can redo that merge. We have these inset faces that are just killing us here. Why isn't our merge trick working to get rid of these overlapping faces? Maybe if we increase the threshold a little bit. Nope. So this might be one of those times where we just have to nuke it and start over. No shame in that. I don't know. I don't get too wound up whenever I make mistakes in these videos. Because chances are, since this is a beginning course, you guys are making some of the same mistakes. And you're asking yourself, well, why are you making the mistakes at all? You're supposed to be the expert. Well, I don't know. I guess I just get a little fatigued talking for 2 hours, making a video. But no big deal. I'll teach from it. That's a little too big. Why don't we scale it down? There we go. Plus my recording software kind of adds a little bit of a, I don't know, like a lag to my myosine. So sometimes, see, that's what's happening. And Backface Coin would have told me. Sometimes when I go to extrude, I won't have a face selected. So when I extrude it, it extrudes the whole model, and that's the issue there. I wonder if you guys just saw the lag here. All right, so now we're going to build up this face here. So every time I extrude, I'm going to kind of rotate that face, rotate the face, and then boom. Now I'm going to rotate it so I keep the same kind of width Is my keyboard messing up? All right, back in track. Back on task. There we go. So I'll insert the extra little edge loop there so I can resize it. Snap that top there. And something I've noticed sometimes whenever you're making these curvy patterns, sometimes the width of your object will get messed up if you don't rotate it exactly right as you're extruding along these bends. So going back and making sure it's not like crinkled like that really helps. So paying special attention to that. All right. So I am going to sub-D this, so I'm not going to worry too much about adding too many verts there. I just want to get that shape pronounced. All right. And I can already see that it's not exactly the shape that I want. So I want to I think it kind of flares out a little bit maybe. Yeah, that's what I want. I lost a little bit of my width there. All right, so now I'm going to go and delete this bottom face because I don't need it because it's intersecting geometry. And bada boom, freeze, reset, mirror around the Z, combine, merge verts. Oh, what's going on there? Well, my merge tolerance was a little bit high, so I'm going to bring it back down to like really low, like 0.001. All right, and that's the back of my chair. Now I need to create these nice little spindles. So I'll go to cylinder, and I'm going to set the pivot point to be at the very bottom. So all I have to do is kind of rotate it from the base so I get that rotation I want. And I think it's a little bit smaller than that. So yeah, why don't we start with the obvious choice here. There's one part of this chair that I forgot to take into account, and that's how it angles back a little bit. Maybe I should do something like that. All right, maybe that was too much. There we go. Angles back a little bit. And in fact, I think I'm actually going to push these verts back a little bit. Now that's an interesting shape. Nice. A little fancy. All right, so let's I have this wooden dowel spindle. I'm going to delete the top and bottom faces here. Now I'm going to soften those normals. And from here, it's just a matter of getting the right rotation so it's perfectly inset into this. You know what? I need to add some insert edge loop. There we go. Need to really define this border piece. Get it hard. There we go. That's looking better. So there's one spindle. Duplicate it. Maybe rotate it a little bit. Scale it down vertically. Make one more duplication. Scale it down. And since it's kind of on a different curve, I need to rotate it a little bit so it's perfectly inset. And then I need to space them out evenly. There we go. Freeze, reset, copy, negative scale, and there's the back of my chair made. All right. Let's go ahead and add that all to layer one so we can just close it out. Actually, I'm gonna, yeah, I'll make a new cylinder. I was going to try to reuse one of those, but probably be just as fast to do this. Now I need to make the legs of this guy. And we'll just delete the tops and bottoms. There we go. And why don't I position this? That's a huge leg, so I need to scale it down a little bit. Rotate it that way and rotate it out. Now, since I set the pivot at the cap of that cylinder, I can just scale straight from the top of it and extend those legs out as far as I need to. Let's do about 2.5 feet, maybe 3. Looks good. I think it's too thick though. There we go. Soften those edge normals. Freeze, reset, and do the mirror duplication dance. And that way we're getting exactly symmetrical legs coming out. All right. Create one more cylinder for the supports down here. So let's rotate it in to a 90-degree projection. And of course, we're going to have to come in and really scale the dickens out of it. All right, there we go. Soften. Again, we'll delete the end caps off of the cylinder because we're never going to see them. Freeze. And then I'll do the centerpiece right here. Maybe make it a little bit smaller so it insets more easily into that. Put it in the center there. So now we're perfectly set up to do a mirror duplication along. There we go. So nothing new here. All right, so why don't we combine everything? I need to merge these verts right there though. And that's my chair made. Okay. So let's go and do the cleanup in my outliner next. Delete all by history. Chair mesh 001. Let's delete that temporary layer we made. Now let's figure out the exact scale we need. Let me bring in my floor here. There we go. Just getting the eye for the proportions. And we'll just kind of place them like so. All right, great. Let's take a look at our progress so far. Okay. So our house is coming along really nicely. Okay, so all that's left to do now is the chandelier. So why don't we take a look at this chandelier's reference art we have. All right, let me bring up my asset list. It's becoming really invaluable during my workflow, being able to look at it, like at all the things I have easily. So this is probably the most complex shape to make in this video. So let's discuss it a little bit. First, we have this hook that scales larger to about right here, so it expands and then comes down here. We have some chains we need to make. We have this really weird, like spindly, like DNA helix pattern here that we can actually use the helix primitive for. And then we'll extrude out using some NURBs making this stuff. So there's a few different very rarely used primitives we're going to be using, and some really neat NURBS modeling techniques we're going to use to get this shape just right. So let's get started. All right. So I'm going to go to set all layers. I'm holding right click. Just holding right click anywhere here. Set all layers to invisible. And it looks like I need to add these to the dining room. All right, cool. Let's get started making that hook, if you will. So let's use some NURBS to make that hook. So I'm going to start out with a circle as my extrusion. And I'm just going to kind of eye it for the most part. I could bring in an image layer or an image plane with that chandelier on it to get everything exactly. And you know what? I think I'm going to do that just to demonstrate that real quick. So I'll drag and drop this image right to my desktop. I'm not going to obsess too much over naming stuff. It'll be a temporary thing we're going to use. So go into my Maya and we'll create a free image plane. Bring up my outliner so I can see it in my outliner. So my image plane. So with my image plane selected, we'll double click my attribute bar button up here at the top right. And let's go to image name, click on my folder, and set it like so. All right, so it's really small right now. So why don't I just scale it up a little bit? In fact, I can use this image plane. I can go ahead and get the right scale for everything. This image plane is going to kind of be like my guide. I mean, that's a pretty small chandelier right there. Maybe a little bit bigger. I'll dig that. All right, so the width and height, I'm going to lock down those values. So with width and height selected, I'm going to right click on them. I'm going to lock selected. Well, actually, I guess I needed to lock down the scale. So I can't scale this guy anymore, but I can zero out. So I got the right scale for my chandelier. And I'm going to make a temporary layer for my image plane. Just lock it out. And I'm going to push it back a little bit into the distance. Gotcha. All right. So why don't we take this circle here. It's kind of hard to see. Kind of hard to see the diameter of the, so why don't I just hide that image plane? There, now I can see the diameter. I'm just hiding the layer I put it on. So white. All right, so now I have the diameter of my hook made. Why don't we use the CV curve tool to create its path? So something's happening here. We're not able to see. I know why. Because my image plane is on the wrong side. There we go. So notice how I can't see the curves over here until I bring it on the other side. All right. So I'm not going to delete this curve. I can just continue off where I left with the add points tool. There we go. We'll bring it down to about right there. We'll press enter. And why don't we tweak it a little bit, get the exact kind of curvature we want. kind of staying right in the middle of this image plane here. I'm going to delete some edit points. I don't need that many, I don't think. All right, I'm happy with that. Except for this endpoint. I need it going straight down more. There we go. And I'll use, where is that tool at? I'm going to zero out the position of my diameter curve. And I'm going to get it right on the tip there, then hold down C and see how it snaps to the curvature. There we go. Holding down C will snap to a curve. So I will now extrude, surface, extrude. And that looks pretty good, except we're missing one of the finer details of this hook, in that it scales out. Starts kind of small and then scales. All right, well, surface, extrude. Oh, scale. What is going on here? I think when we scale it, it gets a little messed up with how it intersects. So that's no problem. What we'll do is we'll put, and let me go back and make sure that whenever we were using the extrude tool, we were doing polygons. Okay, good. So I'm going to select my newly made extruded surface. I'm going to make another temporary layer and I'm going to lock it down. Now I'm going to be able to come in here with my curve tool. I haven't deleted my history, so now I can edit my curve with my control vertices. And then rather than using my curve to follow along on the reference image, I'm going to adjust my reference image based on what's going on. It's not liking that. There we go. So I need to delete a control vertex. The scale is making it all squirrely. See, as we get close in, the scale makes it crunch up like that. So we'll follow it as best we can in regards to that. And if I scale down, yeah, there we go. I think what we'll have to do though, it's keep scaling down all the way. I think we'll just have to pick a point in the newly created extruded surface. I'm going to delete my history and get rid of these curves. I think I have to pick a point where I'm just like, okay, enough's enough. Get rid of this extra extruded faces here. And then I'll just flatten this out. Oh, yep, that's what I want to do. And then I'll just extrude from here, do an edge extrusion from here. That way I'm getting the same length, width all the way down. That's where I want to be. Sorry for jumping around so much. All right, and then I'll just scale up there, kind of creating this little crinkly area. All right, so I'm going to ignore the helix pattern real quick, but I am going to extrude back in and continue down with the main part of this chandelier. I need to scale that down just a little bit more. That's closer to the shape I want. It's actually not the shape I want. So I'm going to select the edges on this cylinder here and just scale them. So there we go. And then when I scaled those edges down, this kind of came down. So I'm going to just snap those back up and go from right here. And then I think I need to extrude these edges out again. Oh, let me go into edges because I don't have a face to extrude. I got to extrude edges here. All right. I'm kind of getting off on the concept art here, but we'll use it to our best of our ability. Yeah, I kind of messed up on that extrusion. So I'm just going to go grab my vertices and then scale it from there. So it's just being really comfortable with your edges and faces and verts and knowing when to select which. And that'll finish that shape off. All right. So that's looking pretty good. Why don't we go to my surface mesh display, set normal angle to like 60. That'll smooth all the round pieces. I mean, it's going to be sub D eventually, so it won't matter, but for right now, just so we can look at it, it looks like we need to close out this bottom cap right here. So I'll bring these up and in, and all the other little guys will come shooting right down off of it, like so. I'm not going to worry too much about the little crinkles right here. I'm just not going to dwell on it. Okay, what we need to do next is, why don't we go ahead and make the candlesticks. So I'll lock down my main shape that I just made. This was all done from a poly NURBS extrusion, or a NURBS to poly extrusion technique. So doing a lot of work for us, especially when we convert it to polygons right when we extruded. We were able just to use some of our polygonal modeling techniques to continue with that shape. So now I'm going to use the same extrusion tool or method to extrude out these little spindly arms. I'm going to get, and I don't think this arm right here is directly right in front of us. I think it's turned a little bit. But I'm still going to base my curve on it because it'll help me keep my curve really smooth and not, all lopsided. So not too many control verts, just where I need them. Like so. Now let's go in and clean up this curve using my control vertices. So we're not matching the control vertices to the reference picture. We're just matching the curve to the reference picture. So if that means the control vertices kind of have just to go flying out in space somewhere, then that's what it means. See how using that reference image, I have a nice curve now. All right, so let's grab my diameter and my path, go to surfaces. Let's turn off the scale, set it back to 1, and hit apply. Perfect. Delete my history. Get rid of my curves. I don't need my curves anymore. And then from here, it's just doing the extrusion dance all the way up. Oh my goodness. It's black. Mesh display, reverse normals. There we go. Don't have to worry about being black. That's because the curve direction was reversed. So we could have reversed our curve direction. But I just decided to keep it simple and just reverse the normals of a polygon. So I'm adding a little bit more detail right there. I gotta tell you, using a reference image to model off of, really fun. Well, oh, I got lucky there. Oh, okay. Yeah, looks like having trouble scaling it just right, and right there. Okay. Oh goodness, that's not scaled at all. Since it's so white, I'm having trouble seeing it. Might have been helpful in Photoshop to go in and isolate the white background from the actual model, so all I saw was a chandelier. And then just for the little light bulb thing right here, I kind of just take artistic liberties. In fact, I can just start matching it any way I want because it's kind of lopsided, so I can match that shape all day long. The extrusion dance. Really easy to do whenever you have a good reference image to work from, like I do. Alright, I just need to go down here and fix whatever is going on right there. In fact, since I was a little off anyway, now that I got the outline made perfectly, I can actually go in and fix so it's more centered with the stalk. Cool. Alright, before I duplicate this all the way around, I'm going to add some support edge loops to get this shape perfect. It's going to need sub D mode. There we go. Just putting one on the outside and inside of every hard edge we see. This is kind of more of a gradual bend right there, so only put one support edge loop on that one. But things where it's like a hard 90-degree edge, yeah, I typically put an edge loop on either side of all the bends. I don't know where that was going. I love support edge loops because at the end of the day, we get paid because it looks real good. All right, so now it's just a simple matter of where's that pivot point? Is it right in the center? I want to bring this out for a second. I need to put the pivot point right in the center of this curve because whenever I duplicate, you know what? Maybe I don't. Maybe I just need to position it. Let's get rid of my image layer real quick. I'll just position it kind of where I want it. And that's that. All right, now, since I'm using the mirror duplication trick, instead of, yeah, I guess I can just go and then -1 in the X. Oh, looks like it was a little bit off still. They actually probably need to go in a little bit. And then from here, I'm just going to do like a 180. Actually, that's wrong. I need to do a 90. There we go. Things shaping up to be pretty nice. So with these made, I'm actually going to put those on their own temporary layer again, so I can just isolate them. Because now I need to make the helix right here. So we're going to do that by going to Polygon Primitives, and we're just going to create a helix. And my God, is it a nightmare right now. How are we going to use this shape and make that? Well, the attributes editor is really nice. So if I bring up my attribute editor right here and go to polyhelix, there's a few tweaks and settings we can do right here. First of all, I think I only want one coil, so that'll be pretty big. Why don't we kind of scale it a little bit too? And then what if we adjusted the height to like 6? Let's check the progress. I think we need to increase the width. Not the width of the, or the, not the width of the overall helix. See, and if you don't adjust it with the height over here, see how the diameter stays the same over there? If I do this, then we get this really weird looking oblong diameter. So that's why I'm working with that tool is important. All right, so we may not get it exactly perfect. Maybe I need to extend my coils a little bit. Let's do like 1.3 coils. That basically means how many times it wraps around on itself. And we'll go into sub D node just to make sure we're getting it right. We're not even centered on the grid. That was causing the weird clipping that we saw. I think if we adjust the height just a little bit more, maybe scale it down. I'm going to fudge some things. All right, so we're having trouble kind of just getting it exactly hidden in there. That's where we take artistic liberty. And be like, you know what? Okay. So I'm scaling it, and then we're getting some weird issues going on. So I'm going to select all the verts on the top and bottom of these pieces right here. Now I'm going to scale it. And then those should fit pretty easily in there. But then I have to go in and adjust it a little bit. I want to even scale this out even more. And you know what? It's clipping into this middle one too, so we're going to cheat here too. We're going to make this thinner. Snap that. Snap these verts down there. We're just going to keep tweaking these settings until, there we go, the radius is what we wanted. Now it's getting plenty of clearance. And there we go. I love artistic license. Freeze, rotate, freeze transformations. And then we're just going to rotate this 90 degrees. Position it a little bit. And then we'll just rotate them again. Position them yet again. Actually, I don't like that. I'm going to do one at a time. Then we'll do a 180 on this one. Bring that one in and over. And then do a negative 90 over here. And then it's just a matter of bringing it over and again. So there we go. An approximation of the complex shape we wanted to make, but it works. Looks like we got this vert innocent bystander in the process. Yeah, it looks like the top of this little disc got a little bit off. It's okay. We know how to snap our verts in a certain axis. Saved it. All right, so now why don't we just add some support edge loops to the top of this, to our top part of our chandelier. All right, let me get back into edge object mode. There we go. Our edge loops help us keep form while in sub D mode without sacrificing our hard edges where we want them. Basically, I'm just defining all the hard edges on my sub D model. And good Lord, whatever. we lost some of our width or our dimensions there, so I'm just gonna make it bigger. Whenever we sub-D'd it, yeah. All right, so let's bring back that, and I can't tell if this is clipping out or not. From a distance, they're clipping. That looks good close up. I think that's all that matters. All right, so let's use a polygon torus to make chain links. All right, so it's not looking like much until we go into our attribute editor and really define the shape of this torus. So bring in my attribute editor. And we're just going to really maybe add an edge loop or two, like so. So notice how I'm putting them kind of far off. Allows us to keep that kind of roundness. And since I've kind of already started editing, maybe it's too late to tweak the radius. Nope, still can tweak the radius, section radius, so I can get the kind of thickness I want out of it. Great. And just keep them in sub D mode, and then we just duplicate, rotate in the 90 degrees. Oh, looks like we need to rotate in the x-axis 90 degrees. And then we'll just exponentially duplicate, like so. Give it a little bit of a chain. Then we're just going to come in and add a little twist, a little bit of a different twist on each one, just so it doesn't look so artificial. And that is our chandelier made. All right. So I'm going to combine it all now. Delete history, freedom transform. Let's bring up my outliners so we can delete that image plane now. Chandelier, mesh, 1. And let's set all layers to visible. And since our image plane was already scaled, the way we wanted. I don't have to worry about the size of it too much. I'm just going to put it over my dining room table. And I've made a few too many links of chain. That's okay. I'll just do something like that. Makes it look like there's a hook in the ceiling we're attached to. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Let's bring it out a little bit. And that's my chandelier made for my dining room table. I think that's a little too low. There we go. A nice little centerpiece to our house. All right, so I'm going to select, lock down my living room, put my chandelier in my dining room level. And then here's a nice little trick. Sometimes you may have a bunch of layers that aren't being used. So we can go to layers and we can delete unused layers. And I got rid of all those temporary layers that didn't have any objects inside of them. All right, so that is pretty much every bit of detail I needed to add to my house to fulfill all the requirements of the assignment. So why don't we sit down and talk about the assignment now? All right. So why don't we bring up the parameters real quick? We got those. So you saw the asset list I was using constantly. You're going to have to share the asset list. So why don't I go ahead and bring that up? I can show you how you can share a public link. So I'll go to my drive. I'm going to navigate to my asset list. So we go to my teaching folder, modeling 1, modeling house interior, and let's bring up my house interior asset. So to make this viewable for me, we'll go to File, Publish to Web, and we'll hit Publish. Yeah, I'm sure about that. And then this hyperlink right here, I'll copy and paste. And then if I use that hyperlink and just paste it in there, I get a nice, quick spreadsheet link to it. And yeah, it's kind of going over here, but that's fine. So I'm going to want to see this hyperlink. So you need to include that in your turn-in. You know, maybe make a little notepad file with it. Because I want you guys using Google Drive on this. So I really want you to figure out how to do that share I just did. Or you can input the URL and the text box when you turn in the project. I'll make it where you can turn in a file and input text. So I'm going to want to see an asset list like this and links to all your reference images like so. And I'm going to want to see the interior structure of your house. So walls, floor, ceiling, and the molding around the tops and bottoms. I want to see you make a living room. So you're going to have one piece of sitting furniture like a couch or a lazy boy. And then table furniture like a coffee table or an end table. So in a decor item of your choice, I did the rug. And I kind of cheated on that because I also had a chimney place that I did right in front of it. And then I want you to make a kitchen. So you'll have a countertop. And if you want to add cabinets, you can, but I'm not going to require it. And then I want to see you put a sink in those counters. Then I want to either see you make a refrigerator or a dishwasher or a stove or maybe a toaster, some kind of electronic appliance, blender works inside your kitchen. And then one room of choice. I did a dining room, but you're going to have to do at least 3 models for your room of choice. So you can do a bathroom, a dining room, a reading room, like an office with a bookcase and stuff like that. Just something. I'm giving you guys a little bit of choice. But the main thing is I want you building your interior structure and 9 different models for 3 different rooms. All right. It can be a lot, so pace yourself. Don't pick some challenging things to do, but don't pick 9 really challenging things to do. You know, I had a good mix of, simple, like this coffee table, and then the cabinets are pretty simple, and that refrigerator wasn't too challenging. And then I had things like the chandelier and the spindle back chair. and even the couch was a little bit trickier to do. And of course, the sink's going to be, you know, something to consider as well. But using the techniques I showed you, you should be fine. So you're going to make your whole interior house. Keep in mind that I'm definitely going to have organized layers and a nice outliner. You guys probably will need it too, just to be able to navigate and build things inside your scene. So definitely have those, unlocked. Definitely have those made and be using those. All right, so this video was rather long, so I'm going to go ahead and end it now. And be sure to check out the outliner. Have any questions, just let me know.